Welcome to Passionate World Talk Radio. Educate, enlighten, entertain. And this morning on Cool Your Heels with Lillian, our special guest is Dr. Samantha Saunders, who has a BVetMed Ph.D. and is a research associate for PETA UK. So good morning, Samantha. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I am fine, thank you. Well, I wanted you on the show because you are working to find a cure for the coronavirus, but more importantly, you're not using animals to test the new vaccine along the way. So could you please tell everybody just a little bit about you so they know who you are, and we'll go on.
Okay, that sounds great. So I am a research associate with PETA UK. I have a doctorate in coronavirology, which I started about 5 years ago when hardly anybody in the world had heard of the coronavirus. It's hard to imagine, fast forward 5 years, that it would be almost the only thing that anybody in the world is talking about. So once I finished my doctorate, I came to PETA to use my science and veterinary background and my passion for helping animals to help replace animal tests for chemicals in the European Union. But of course, the pandemic happened, and now we're getting more and more involved with coronavirus, looking at the amazing methods that researchers are using around the world to beat this thing that doesn't harm animals and that is incredibly relevant to humans.
Well, what gets you started in the first place? Was a coronavirus something that was showing up on the horizon 5 years ago, or is it just something you went eeny, meeny, miny, mo?
So actually, coronaviruses have been around for almost as long as humans have been around and animals have been around. They are very, very common viruses. Most species have more than one coronavirus that circulates within the species, usually causing fairly mild disease. The reason I was interested in coronaviruses is actually because I trained as a veterinarian, and there's a coronavirus disease in cats called feline infectious peritonitis, which is deadly in some cats. It can be quite devastating. And I was very interested in finding out exactly how this virus works on a molecular level, how it enters cells, why it causes such severe disease in some cats and such mild disease in others. And that's what got me into coronaviruses.
Do you find any similarities between the extensive damage it does in cats with the extensive damage it also does in humans?
There certainly are similarities. Yeah, I think they do behave in quite similar ways. Feline coronavirus tends to be more of a disease of the intestine, whereas what we're seeing in humans with COVID-19 is it tends to affect the lungs more. But there certainly is this thing where some humans or cats seem to be very severely affected and others not so much, which is certainly a similarity. Yeah, it's really interesting. And actually, some of the things that people have been identifying, some challenges of vaccine development, are things that the feline coronavirus research community has known about for decades.
They just never thought it would jump into humans, because I know here in the States it can go into your kidneys, it can go into your liver, it can go into your heart. So it sounds like it's the type of virus that really can adapt to the human immunity system and cause havoc wherever it decides to float into.
Right, and it's important to say that the feline coronavirus and the virus that's causing COVID-19 are separate viruses. So the feline coronavirus doesn't affect humans at all. But you're completely right. The COVID-19 virus, most likely jumped from animals into humans. And because humans are naive to it, we don't have immunity to it, that's why we're seeing it really tear through the human population and cause such a great deal of damage.
So how difficult is it to come up with a vaccine that can, kill off the main part, the primary part of the virus, and also create the serum along the way so it can protect humans from the various other parts of the body that the virus can find its way into?
Well, what a vaccine tries to do is actually train the immune system. So a vaccine is usually part of the virus or maybe an inactivated virus, and it causes the immune system to recognize it as the virus and to raise an immune response to it. And that means that when the person who's been vaccinated encounters the virus in real life, they'll already have those immune cells and those antibodies that will help them fight off the virus far better than an unvaccinated person. And actually what's so important about vaccine trials is that these vaccines really do need to be tested in humans and not in animals. You know, the way that a vaccine behaves in a mouse or a monkey is so different to the way it will behave in a human. And what's really exciting is that we're seeing medicines regulators like the FDA actually recognizing this. And for the first time ever, vaccines have gone directly to human trials without waiting for the results of lengthy and deadly animal trials. This is medicines regulators basically saying that some of these animal tests are dispensable. They don't serve us, and they actually slow down the discovery of effective vaccines.
So what do you do? I know that my dad had Parkinson's, and I know when L-Dopa first came out, they asked for humans to experiment on and to see whether the new L-Dopa that they would introduce into the system would help delay the effects of Parkinson's, and it did work. So is that the same type of theory and method that you'll be using on humans to test the C virus vaccine?
Well, I'm first of all so glad to hear that L-Dopa did make a difference. Of course, Parkinson's is a really devastating disease, and unfortunately what we've seen is history littered with examples of animal experiments failing to come up with effective treatment for diseases like Parkinson's, like stroke, like Alzheimer's. You know, experimenters have been tying off the blood vessels in animal brains for decades to simulate what happens in a stroke, because of course part of the brain loses its blood supply and dies. But these experiments that cause significant amounts of suffering and pain in these animals have failed to produce a single effective treatment. And this just isn't surprising. There are such profound differences between species. The way that a drug behaves in a mouse isn't going to tell us anything about the way it behaves in a human. And of course, the other side of this is how many drugs are in development or have been in development have actually been shelved because they didn't work in animals, when in fact they might have worked in humans.
So do you go and through doctors, do you ask them to pick individual patients to come in to be tested for a possible breakthrough?
Well, this is something that kind of needs to happen on two levels. Individual scientists really need to rethink the way that they do research. They need to take this opportunity, as awful as this pandemic is, it does present an opportunity to reimagine the way that science is done. We don't want scientists to go back in the lab and conduct business as usual animal tests, because they have proven themselves time and time again to fail to produce effective treatment. So first of all, we're asking scientists and researchers to embrace modern, robust, non-animal methods. But of course, the other side of this is we need governments to actually sit up and listen, to think about the way that things are done. The governments produce the funding, they produce the laws that the researchers have to abide by. And that's why we're asking people to go to PETA.org and let their members of Congress know that they don't consent to wasting time, to wasting taxpayer money, and actually to wasting human lives on cruel and pointless animal experiments.
It does make sense. It almost kind of makes you cringe, though, if anybody came up with the idea of using clones to become the next wave of how scientists would test out their drugs if they stop using animals.
Well, we just have such incredible methods available now. It's not only cells, of course cells are very important, but we have things like sophisticated computer simulations. So for example, scientists in Tennessee are using Summit, which is the world's smartest supercomputer, to very rapidly identify existing drugs that might be suited to fighting coronavirus. And they do this by taking the structure of the virus and the structure of various drugs and seeing if there's a match between the two. And now if there's a match, they can go on to test that drug in infected human cells to see whether the drug has an effect on clearing the virus from those cells. And if it's effective in that way, it can then be taken forward to responsibly conducted human trials with consenting volunteers.
Well, they already knew that you could just take a vaccine like this or a potential vaccine and put it into human cells, then why are they messing around with animals then? Is this something new?
Well, the thing is, people are doing things the same old way as they've always been done because people are resistant to change. It's as simple as that. And we're seeing experimenters falling back on these methods that they know and that they're used to, rather than thinking critically and realizing that animal tests are almost guaranteed to fail. But this isn't good enough anymore. We're in a crisis. This is the public health emergency of a generation, and we desperately need scientists, researchers to be using methods that give us the best possible chance of coming up with effective treatments and vaccines. And that is using things like organs on chips, which are these incredible devices that simulate the way a human organ works, using things like sophisticated computer simulation, and also 3D tissue models. So these are 3D models of human organs that use human cells, and they very successfully emulate the way that an organ works.
Samantha, we have run out of time. So if you can please tell everybody where they can find more information about doing vaccine testing on humans instead of animals, and where they can find PETA, and where they can possibly contact you to ask you further questions.
Yeah, please go to PETA.org. That's PETA.org. You can find out information about everything I've spoken about there, and you can also contact your members of Congress to let them know that you do not consent to animal tests.
Thank you very much. Thank you all very much for listening. You can hear this interview all over again in late June on AMFM247.com, Tuesday evening from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern. Cool Your Heels with Lillian. While you're waiting, you can listen to also on https:// World Talk Radio. Right-hand side of the page menu. Scroll down to Cool Your Heels. Also, all social media, iTunes, iHeart, Amazon, Alexa, Spotify, Spreaker, podcast. And before you go away and stray, Montaigne had this to say in 1580, difficulty is a coin the learned make use of, like jugglers, to conceal the inanity of their art, and which human Scottishness easily takes for current pay. Thank you all very much for listening, and remember, stay safe.